Hey guys, let's talk Black Swan insurance. Now, there's multiple ways to do it in the market with options. The most common one is you can just buy puts. I was I reviewed a fund yesterday called BHedge, BHDG, from X funds, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to use puts to hedge the downside in Bitcoin. Well, that's definitely one way to do it, but there's a jillion other ways to do it. Tonight, we're going to look at some Black Swan funds that are doing it using options, but they're kind of using a reverse psychology. They're kind of using a little 5D chess here. I kind of like what they're doing. Anyway, there's a couple of the kind of the main approach is this synth equity approach. And there's actually a fund called SNTH that runs this approach. But it's basically what we're studying tonight. And then there's Amplify has a fund called Swan, does the same thing. Amplifies Black Swan Growth and Treasury Core ETF. So they use options. We know about funds that use options to pay a yield. I mean, but you don't have to. You can also use options, and instead of paying yourself a yield, you can use options to get extra upside or to have downside protection or whatever. Well, in this case, they're gonna use options in such a way where they still get the upside of the market, but they don't participate in large parts of the downside. So it's like Black Swan insurance, but they do it in a different way. Anyway, so Amplify has this one called Swan, and why invest in Swan? Participate in the S&P 500 returns. It's also uncapped. It's not capped, so you participate in returns while avoiding significant losses. There's an index right here that this ETF is based on. The index has a white paper that's actually really, really interesting right here that I'm going to link to. It's called Using Barbells to Lift Risk-Adjusted Return. It's a fascinating look at this strategy. But basically, the strategy is what they're doing is instead of going out and buying the SPY and tying up a bunch of money, or they could also buy the SPY, tie up, go buy 1,000 shares of the SPY, tie up $680,000. Then they could buy puts to hedge the downside, but that ties up a lot of money. But I mean, the downside is definitely hedged. That's one way to do it. A more efficient way to do it is just take whatever puts they're buying, forget about the shares, don't buy the shares, and change whatever those puts are to calls, and don't buy the puts. And it's the same right there. It's the same trade. It's the same risk. And that's the whole idea, synthesizing stock, but only taking the upside. That usually these funds use about a 70 delta call. This is a 69. So they get about 70% of the upside uncapped, and they go out a year. They use a leap. They go out a year. So let's say the market goes up 20% over the next year. Well, this darn option is worth $115,000 profit, and it only cost them 74 to put on. So they've doubled their money, but they use this this is their stock part of their portfolio. They just use this. If the market keeps going up, they're fine. Market goes up 7%, they make money, 10%, whatever. They just want the market to go up. Market's up 15%. This option doubles in value. It only tied up 74,000, and it's up 79,000. Even if the market goes up 15% by the end of the year, if that's a really good year, gosh, God forbid. But anyway, so that's the trick right there. And the trick is, who cares how low the market goes? The most you can lose is 74,000. And this is on about a $680,000 contract. So you can lose about 11%, which isn't great. I mean, but that's black swan insurance there. So that's the whole idea of these funds. So Amplify's doing that, and Synth Equity's doing that. Here's the Amplify. This is the Amplify white paper, but this white paper is even better. It's called Leaping Black Swans, and it's some guys out of Kentucky, Eastern Tennessee and Western Kentucky. And I love this paper right here, Leaping Black Swans. They show you how to do the same exact thing we're talking about. This is a great white paper. I'm going to link to all three of these, and I highly recommend, if you're interested in doing this yourself or something, read this Leaping Black Swans. They tell you how to do it and what you have to watch out for. All right. So, but what I think is impressive is this. Let's look at Synth first SPY. Well, look at this. Since inception, Synth is beating SPY. And it's just synthetic equity. So it can only lose like 10%. And it looks like that's about what it was losing during the April pullback. But if it would have got worse, it can only lose, a fraction, but it can pretty much gain with the market. Synth's gone from, call it 25 to 31, where the SPY's gone from 555 to 681. I mean, but Swan could work also. Swan could work also. To be fair, just looking at this example right here, in the April pullback, Swan protected capital a lot better than Synth did. Swan was not even down 5%, where Synth was down, about 8%, it looks like, at the worst. So it's great to have choices out there. So you have Synth, you have Swan. I was looking at some other ones just for fun. What about SBAR? This is a different way to solve the same problem. These guys use options to put a barrier and put a buffer on the returns and smooth the returns out. Same thing that those other funds are trying to do. That it's just a different way. It's just a different way to do it. But SBAR could be interesting. Let's compare SBAR to Synth. See how it's been so far. Synth is pretty darn impressive. Synth is beating SBAR pretty bad. Let's compare Synth to CAIE. CAIE is another way to kind of solve the same problem. And yeah, CAIE is, Synth's ahead of it, but not by very freaking much. And these are two different strategies. CAIE is something called auto-callable bonds, but they have an element in them that's kind of like a barrier option or a buffer fund. It has elements of a buffer fund built into its bond. So, and it looks like whatever, and Synth is doing it a different way. They're getting safety from options just in a different manner, but the results are very, very close. It looks like the results are very close, at least over this time frame so far. Synth does not pay a yield. CAIE does. That's something to say there. So that's not really a super fair comparison. But my point is Synth, Swan, CAIE, SBAR could all be good places. Could all be good places to sit out the market if the market pulls back next year or something. and you want to, you want to be in the market. You still want partial upside, but oh, and yeah, here's the other one I was trying to think of, or ZDEC, or you could go with an innovator. This is a different way to solve the same problem. These guys sell calls to buy puts, so they have capped upside. Unlike, I really like Synth and Swan, how they don't have capped upside. That Synth and Swan are in my opinion, pretty slick solutions. But this could work too. And this, your capped upside going in. So this one right here, the upside is like 6.65 remaining cap. Or I guess you have 5.88 remaining or something. But the downside buffer is complete. You can't lose anything, and you just have to hold it for a year. You just have to hold it for a year. So you can't lose anything. But I mean, the most you can make is 6.65 on the upside. But you can't lose anything. I mean, and that's important. I mean, so this could work for someone, I guess. But anyway, so those are our options for a pullback next year. We have something like from Innovator, this ZDEC. Well, then we have something like Chaos, which is a tail risk ETF. Doesn't pay yield, but uses options to hedge the downside. That could be a good one. Then we have CAIE. It does kind of something similar in a totally different way, but it puts the downside off in the distance. You don't have to worry about the downside because of the options, because of the strike prices of these bonds being so far out of the money. Then you have SBAR. It's a similar concept. I'm still saying, though, that either Swan, iSwan, or Synth are the cool concepts. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much. I'll upload those papers, read them, let me know what you think. I'll talk to you later.